Hi, everyone. My name is Giselle Gonzalez. I am one of the co-founders for the Sideline Project. Considering the circumstances, we are here joining you guys virtually. This is something new that we're doing. This is a series of platicas called the Sideline Platicas that we're going to start doing, where we're going to have different conversations, different dialogues about different topics and different things. And I think more than ever right now, dialogue is needed. And so I think that this is a great way where we're going to be able to have some good conversations. So I'll go ahead and let everyone else, the rest of the team, introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jorge. And as you already heard from Giselle, we are all co-founders of the Sideline Project.
My name is Jocelyn. I am another one of the co-founders, and I know that we're all very excited to get these conversations going and sharing these platicas with all of you.
Hi, my name is Joanna Sanchez. I am one of the co-founders, and I'm really excited to bring these platicas for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I think dialogue is definitely needed right now. And I think especially being Latinx, I think that this topic with the murder of George Floyd really brought an uproar in the nation, a much needed uproar, I think. And I think that as Latinx, we really need to, at times, check where we stand within our community. And I think these past couple of days, as a team, we've been having a lot of conversations about how we're addressing our own anti-Blackness within our own community, checking our own privilege as well. And I think that one of the things when we were having this conversation that was brought up was how Telemundo and Univision, a lot of the Spanish-speaking networks really were, I think, processing or I think televising the story of George Floyd and the protests going around the country. Does anybody want to share something that they saw at the news that they felt was not being reported right or problematic in a way?
So I'll go ahead and just quickly get started. So one thing that I personally noticed was I was watching the news a couple days ago and I was with my mom. And when I believe it was Univision, they were interviewing a Latina business owner. And, they were asking her, how is your business after the looting and all these things, right? And the way I understand that it's important to let people know, that there were people affected, but the way that they were sharing one side or the other was they were criminalizing the protesters. And I feel like for a lot of Latinx, when you look at your news outlets and you see that your own people are being affected, you automatically think it's us versus them, which is definitely not the message that Univision or Telemundo should be sending out. I think they lack the ability to educate our Latinx community on why these protests are happening, because yes, while people know that it's because of the death of George Floyd that, this whole thing was triggered, it's important for them to also understand that it wasn't just this one incident. It's been years and centuries of oppression. Univision and Telemundo are not doing a good job at all at not criminalizing the protest and making the audience understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and we've seen that for years, how I really like your point of when it's our community, that's the fact that it becomes this us between them thing, rather than addressing the, these cops that are brutally attacking Black folks are the same cops that attack our community and that put us in deportation proceedings. And so I think that there's that misconnection between Latinx folks and the news outlet because of how it is put out there.
I'm really thinking about, I really don't, personally, I really don't watch like Telemundo and Univision, but the little clips I saw, it really didn't show any empathy of, of the reason this is happening. And I think we need to be more able to empathize with these issues because I remember seeing posts, when about, how the officers are being charged with second-degree murder. And they're like, oh, so are the protests gonna stop? And I was like, this is not one incident, that it happened. Like, we're talking about institutions, that are doing this over and over. Within 1 year, how many deaths have we had? But previous years, it was the same thing. And I think, um, I don't think they see the bigger picture, and I'm not sure if the news is, portraying the actual real picture of what really the purpose of all of this is.
Right, yeah. I think it's a really good point. I think that the bigger picture here is sometimes being lost. And I think that, like you said, this wasn't just one incident. I mean, this have been several incidents, and this was the bomb that really, made people wake up and really, I mean, practically start a revolution. It's what we're seeing, really.
Yeah, and as we already said, there's no right way to protest centuries, thousands of years of oppression.
Yeah, and I think that Telemundo and Univision is really, really feeding into the anti-Blackness that already exists within our community. They're validating that, and it is very disappointing to see that they aren't taking the time to try to get rid of the anti-Blackness within our community. And I know that's another topic that we wanted to discuss. So if anyone wants to get that conversation started.
Yeah, I think that I just during these past few weeks I saw, and I'm sure you guys have seen it all, the graphic that says El Indiscreto Racismo LatinX, where it has a picture of a lighter skin tone, a white baby, and then a darker skin tone baby. And so how, within our own Latinx community, within our own families, really, because we've all heard it. We were just talking about this the other day, how, if you're a lighter skin tone, it's like, if you fit more the Eurocentric beauty standards, you're considered more beautiful rather than if you have, some darker features. And I hadn't seen this video, but I just saw this video, I think 2 days ago, where it was the Spanish-speaking children, and they placed a white doll baby and a black doll baby, and they were telling him, what do you think is more beautiful, or who do you think looks more like you, or something like that. And there was this kid who was of a darker skin tone, and when they asked him, who do you think looks more like you, he pointed at the white baby, because he was like, well, my ears look more like him. And so they automatically assume that white is good and that white is beautiful, that it's perfect. And they think that's something that we've seen, a lot within our own families and communities.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we've already discussed all of this, but we really need to understand that the anti-Blackness within the Latinx community is not just from now. It's not just from a couple of years. I mean, this is here for literally since the beginning of times. And Giselle, I think, was the one that brought up this information, that how many of us knew that the second president of Mexico was actually of African descent. And when you look back at history, he actually became, a lot of us think of, Barack Obama was this big revolution or this big change because he was the first African American president. But Mexico had the first African descent president, and these things aren't talked about enough.
Something I was going to comment on too is that we notice our anti-Blackness Latinx community with comments, little comments like, oh, es que hay que mejorar la raza. So,
I think it's like, it's really within our own family, like culturally, it's within our own families. Like I remember growing up and hearing all these, like tienes que mejorar la raza, or mentioning people who are darker than my complexion, saying, like, oh, no te vayas a casar con, o no te juntes con alguien que, who's like, quote unquote, feo. And I'm like, that's not such a thing, right? But it really is ingrained. My mom, who is more of like a darker complexion, and my dad, he is, more fair. His own family, my dad's family, really tried to reject my mom because of her color of skin. and that is a concept, with each family that it's taken. Like, even as Latinos, we put a lot of nicknames to individuals, and a lot of them I remember saying like El Negrito and stuff like that. And that is really hurtful for individuals, and they always are looking for some way to be better. And I remember members of my family talking about, how to get lighter skin and stuff like that. And we don't talk about these things, but it is true. Like, we are really influenced by media and people like las novelas and stuff. It literally, a lot of people are just really, really white, and we don't talk about these things, and what we're like, what we are feeding ourselves is with really stupid ideals that come from colonism, colonization. How they used to speak of, natives in Mexico, they were savages, all these type of ideals, they've propagated within years. And I think it's an essential thing too. I remember reading an article, it talked about how racism mutates within each generation, and mutates in some way, where it's slight or where it's brutal when it's, right in your face. But these ideals, I think they've mutated and they're incorporated within our own culture. And that needs to be addressed. Like, we mentioned about re-educating ourselves, because it's true, we have to re-educate ourselves, and within our own family, we have to re-educate our parents sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts with having conversations and educating our own family, because I think those comments, we've seen those comments. I'm of a darker skin tone compared to most of my family where we're from in Mexico. They tend to be on the fairer side. And so I came out a little darker. And, there's always been these comments. I remember, I was telling to one of my family one day, like, oh, I got a little tanner this summer. And the response was like, oh, I found these creams that can kind of make you line up a little bit. And I was like, I didn't say I didn't like it. I just said I'm getting tanner. I like it, actually. Like, I like it. And so I'm proud of having a browner, more tanner complexion. And I think that, those comments have been, engraved for decades, I mean, and I think to your point, Joanna, of a lot of these telenovelas, these actors are always of a lighter, skin complexion. And that is what's seen as the beauty norm, at times for Latinas, is how, Latina women are perceived. And so, we really, something that I've, really check myself and acknowledge is that we don't learn, anything about Afro Latinos. We don't acknowledge it within our own community. And at times we honestly reject it. And it's, we have never been taught, we've never been educated on any Afro Latinx history, on the representation. And I think that a lot of what we've discovered has been our own self-educating. But I think that is something that really needs to start changing, because I think that it also has a lot to do with, confidence and how you're brought up. And when we were having this discussion earlier, Jocelyn and I even kind of got into the discussion that we had within our own high schools and our experience in high school, both going into schools that were predominantly white, and how that reflected on our experiences as women of color, with me being a more tanner complexion and Jocelyn being on a more fairer side.
Yeah, and that is a topic that we are going to discuss. We might as well get it started. But we did want to kind of share our experiences, because for those of you that don't know, Giselle and I both attended Oswego East High School. Oswego being, like she said, predominantly white, and then Jorge and Joanna attended East Aurora High School, right? So we all have very different perspectives that we can share, and it's insane how, like, the stories that we have to tell are just unbelievable. One of the things that we were mentioning was, and I'll let Giselle get into her side of the story. I don't want to, speak for her, but for me, I know that it was a bit easier for me to fit in into their groups at Oswego East High School because I was from a more fair skin tone, right? And I think that a lot of people see dark skin colors and just automatically label you as like, you know, being ghetto or being, you know, too Mexican or being too Latino, whatever, you know, whatever it is. There's so many words that people get called. And for me, what I was scared of was people finding out that I am an undocumented student, right? That I am an immigrant myself. But I was able to hide all those things with my skin complexion, even though, yes, I'm not white, right? You don't look at me and you think that I'm white, but because I am a fair skin complexion, I kind of was able to hide behind that and fit in a little more without necessarily being prejudged, right? And as long as I kept my secret to myself that I am undocumented, no one was going to bother me because no one had any way of finding out. And I wasn't being prejudged because of my skin color. And, you know, like I said, I'll let Giselle take over now and share her story. But, you know, just the parallels are just insane, being that we attended the same high school within a year of each other because I'm only a year older than her. But
no, yeah, like you said, I think that or kind of the team is very has very different and similar experiences at the same time. And what made it interesting was that just when I attended the same high school, and then Jorge and Joanna attended the same high school as well, and two very completely different high schools with, you know, completely different experiences. But it's been great seeing when we have these conversations during our meetings or whatnot. It's been great really seeing the complexity of our experiences and what we've gone through. And for me personally, being of a tanner complexion, going to a predominantly white institution high school, it was a struggle. I feel like I was heavily rejected, and not just from high school, but, you know, even from my very early on education. I think that you are labeled as being more problematic and just overall, you know, I remember I used to always get teased because they used to say that I had an accent and I spoke like a chola and that I was ghetto and this and that. And I think that really, I never felt accepted, and I always felt very rejected within that school. And it wouldn't matter if I did well academically. It wouldn't matter if I got involved. It wouldn't matter what I tried to do to really make it, I guess, in a way, reflect that this is not me, but rather look at the work that I'm doing. And that never mattered because it didn't matter if I was involved. It didn't matter if I was in an organization where I was. People always just thought of an accent, and people always just looked at how I looked at without really considering, you know, what my work consisted of or what I was trying to accomplish. And so I would never forget the day. I remember there was this girl who, you know, high school drama, you know, drama and scenes or whatever. And I remember there was this girl who wanted to, I think, just start an altercation or something. And I remember she came up to me and, you know, she started screaming or whatnot. And I remember I was trying to walk to my bus at the time. And as I was walking to my bus, I remember one of the deans actually like pulled me to the side. And he was the one that wanted to hold me in the office when I wasn't the one even starting the altercation. And the other girl was the one approaching me. I was walking to my bus, and the dean went on and physically stopped me because he saw that I was the one starting the altercation, or he saw that I was the one that was going to make things worse. And so that specific experience was the one that really kind of just, I think, really embarked how I was viewed at that school. And I think even for my brother, I remember he was once accused that he hit a teacher, you know, which is completely ridiculous. And, you know, he was told that they took him to the office and they told us, and I remember telling, you know, the administrators, like, okay, let me see it. Show me the cameras. I want to see him hitting the teacher. I remember he was once accused of, he was hanging out, they labeled his group of friends who used to always hang out in the morning. They accused him of being gangbangers, you know, and it's like, these are the things that, these experiences, you know, these I think traumatic experiences really create an impact and how you view yourself even after high school. And I think it really took a hit on my self-confidence, really.
Yeah, I know that stuff, and again, just kind of going off of what Giselle was sharing, even though I wasn't prejudged based on who I was, like I said, because I had to suppress my my roots, my Latinx roots, who I really was. For me, all 4 years of high school consisted of putting on this mask, right? Of no, I am not this extremely, you know, proud Latina. No, I am not this extremely proud Mexican, or no, I am not this undocumented student, because I didn't want to be labeled as that, and it really suppressed my voice, and that really changed after I left the high school. So that just really goes to show how sweet and like you're not letting your students thrive, and um, it's sad, and it's really sad to think that you have to either be scared of sharing who you really are, or like Janelle said, getting involved, because you're always going to be prejudged and you're never going to be given the opportunity to show who you really are just because of the color of your skin. So
and honestly, I think the school itself didn't do anything to provide spaces for students, right? Like, I remember at the time, the club that was, and I'm sure you remember, was LULAC. And then I remember when I was a sophomore maybe, or a junior, there was this girl who used to be the president of LULAC, and she had came into a classroom to kind of try and get Latinos involved. And I remember she was, I mean, she was she was this very a fair skinned Latina whose parents were, high level professionals. I think she was attending, she was going to attend Harvard, some like really big Ivy League. And she was an amazing student. And I think that's why they really kind of had her trying to get Latinos involved. But how can we relate to that? Like, how can we relate to her experiences when I remember hearing her, share with us that she was going to an Ivy League, and, she was doing this with her parents and her family. And it's like, it's great, it's wonderful, but I don't relate to that, like, I don't feel accepted in this group, because all of this group, has other privileges, has other things that, I necessarily may not relate to. And so, I think that there wasn't even any spaces created for us to really kind of feel like we belong, for Latinx students, for students of color in general, and for undocumented students. And we didn't really get those spaces until after high school, which is why, now growing the Sideline Project, where it came from. And so, but yeah, I think, high school is definitely not a good memory.
Yeah, no, definitely wasn't.
Yeah, it's like a bitter taste.
Oh,
yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Like, coming from East, I think, like, within our own school, even though it's primarily, Latinos who are, in this school, like, there was still division within ourselves. We had the Chet people that we used to, and you didn't want to be identified as that. And I think, being an immigrant myself, I used to work so hard with my accent. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot have an accent. I cannot, be correlated with these individuals, because within our own district, we criminalize students so early on, middle school, high school, we have officers in our school. And you don't want to be, labeled with the wrong people, because then it's not looking good for you at the end of the day. And I do remember a lot of division within our Latinx people, like, sharing that my status with a friend of mine, she literally, brought that up, and sometimes used it against me, a friend, quote unquote, that I used to call. And we see this division within our own Latinx community of who feels better, or who feels like, is doing better than you, and they use that against you because of just your status. And that really hurt me, because I was like, okay, you look like me, you speak like me, but you say that I'm so different from you, that I don't fit, I don't fit here. And it always kind of felt like I was taking someone's place, within my own school. And that really made me feel like, I shouldn't, apprehensive of people that approach me just because I was like, oh, who are these people are gonna do, or like, what are they gonna say? And I think finding your voice, like, I literally had to find my voice after high school, because you literally have to advocate for yourself to get those spaces, those safe spaces where you can speak regarding your own struggles and, what's going on, within your household, etc., and things that we can connect. Um, and even though, it's primarily Latino, but I never felt that we had a safe space within our own school. Going to Pilsen and seeing all these other high schools that they have, all these amazing art, in their school. I was like, oh my God, if I could have come here, like I would have felt so
Much
liberated
better.
to say, yeah, like to say that, oh my God, this is who I am, this is who I connect with, like I see myself in those paintings, but nothing, and in our own high school, there was, things that connected me with my community. And it was really harsh to see within our own district, like, I'm sorry, but there's white teachers in our own district that are racist. I used to hear people. I remember this specific teacher because I'm going into a biology major, so it's science related, and I was really really getting into all this science in middle school. And I'm thankful for this one teacher. I remember I was seventh grade, and this specific teacher, I remember she didn't care about us. She would say, like, we're only using space within our own school. Like, these kids, if they don't want to come to school, like, why are they even here? Why do their parents, bring them? She will be browsing over Amazon during, the lectures she used to give us, while she was teaching. I think some of these teachers don't care. They really don't. They just come to our school just because, they're quote unquote in a bad neighborhood just to get their loans parted. And that's really, really annoying because now we question why are students not, ready to go to a college, because in our own schools nothing like that is provided for the students to actually learn and and be successful when you go to college, and take college classes and stuff like that. And I think I'm still struggling to get on top of my game in college. um but yeah, I think that's a little bit of my experience.
Yeah, definitely. Going off of Joanna's story, I do want to say East Aurora is more on the wannabe white side. Right now
Yeah.
they just added like this really nice um, atrium, and then added this new hall, and like it's all pretty and stuff. A lot of people are taking a lot of pictures there, myself included. Not gonna lie. Um, the high school that Joanna was talking about in Pilsen, it's Benito Juarez Academy. I was
Yeah.
there with her. Oh my God, their art is just so beautiful. I would have loved to have that at East. Having your own history there with you. The representation and all that. Um, Something else from East, yeah, we were so segregated. There was the freshman hall, the ghetto hall. We had ROTC. We have ROTC at East Aurora. So there was a lot of people who were in there, a lot of people who didn't like them. I don't know. It's just, we were pretty, I don't know how to say it, but yeah, like segregated. Like we didn't want to be with others.
Yeah, I think just to kind of go off of Joanna and Jorge. So I know I didn't mention, so I did go to high school in Oswego, but I attended middle school in Aurora. So I went to Simmons Middle School. And so I arrived to this country in third grade, right? So by the time I got to middle school, I had been here for about 3 years. And I remember having this, like, always in the back of my mind, like, kind of like Joanna said, I cannot have an accent. I cannot let people know that I just learned English like 2 years ago, like, I can't be labeled. And even our own parents, or at least for myself, I know that my dad was always very scared
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to be pointed out or isolated or not accepted and was going to experience racism because of the way that I spoke English. And he was one of the first people that told me, Mija, like, you need to, try your best. You cannot have an accent because you're going to be singled out and you're going to experience racism, and I don't want that for you. And it sucks, it sucks that a lot of the times our own people, like, just like you said, like, our own people that like look down on others because of whether it's their immigration status or the way that they speak the language, or their skin color. And at Simmons, I remember that there was also this like segregation of like the kids that were in bilingual. I was never in bilingual, and I remember that it was almost like I felt like, oh my God, I made it, because I'm not in bilingual and I'm not gonna be labeled, because I saw the way that people treated the kids that were in bilingual. And like, or something as simple as like, if you're in an honors class, all of a sudden people think that you are, like, we're superior because we're in honors classes, and we're one of the good LatinX in this school because we're gonna make it somewhere. And that mentality is so toxic within ourselves. Like, a lot of these kids are bilingual, like they're not given the opportunity. It's ridiculous the way that they're treated, simply because of, the way that they speak a language or the level of English that they know. And on the other hand, my sister right now, she attends Plink middle school, right? Or junior high. And I see how there's also division within them there too, right? Like, you have like the Latinx who are supposedly like more chat or more ghetto, because they're the ones that just came from Aurora schools, and then the whitewashed, and then they just add at each other, and it's ridiculous because at the end of the day, we all came from the same country. Like, we're all, we're all children of immigrants. We all have immigrant within our blood, and it doesn't make one person better than the other. And it's just whether I've never gone to Benito Juarez, the school that you guys are talking about, but it just sounds like that would be a place where we could actually thrive and not feel left out all the time. I think schools around here just aren't doing a good job at including us.
Yeah, I think like even seeing their resources, what they had in their school, I was amazed. I was like, wow, like this is a complete other just community. Like you could see the community, fighting for each other, and I thought that was amazing to see, because we sometimes as Latinos, once we grow up, I think we go to other communities to find, something that we can connect with. And it's so hard to find it within our own community. We're seeing it, with Aurora downtown. It's already getting, gentrified. And I'm gonna say whatever, the mayor is selling Aurora, and what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? Local businesses that are, made from, immigrants, what are those businesses? They're already, struggling because of paying rent and how the rent went, like all of these things are gonna, they're there, and they're, in the future, it's gonna affect us. Just because white people now want some culture and they just glorify, having culture. Now they want to come into our, communities. Dude, I just don't like when white people think that they're the heroes. Like, they want to be the hero of the story all the time. I'm just like, no, you've made a mess. You literally made the ghettos because of redlining, and now you want to come back and say, oh no, because now people are more culture, and they are, seeing that culture and different ethnicities make America. Now you want to come back to our own communities and start doing their own businesses. I don't know. I just think it's just really problematic, and it's only affecting us even more.
Yeah, I think something that really bothers me, John, going off of what you said about, the mayor selling Aurora, and it's honestly ridiculous how all these new restaurants are coming in, right? And they're supposed to be like on the bougie side of Mexican food and selling their overpriced tacos, because I'm sorry, like they're overpriced. It's like, why were people coming in when we have taquerias in every other like corner, and they're bomb?
Oh my God, we have the dollar tacos on Monday. We don't have them anymore.
Like, I don't know why people act like just now Aurora has gained some sort of culture. Like, just because white people are coming in doesn't mean that we're just gaining culture. Our culture has been here. People just have refused to accept our culture, and they want
Yes.
it to be overpriced, and they want it to be this overly bougie thing and not look like the authentic thing. Like, all these new restaurants, they have to look like super like hip and super like,
Yeah.
like modern for people to want to go to it. And that's not
Right.
what our culture is. Our culture is authentic and it has already been here. So I think it's ridiculous. And to if there's any white people out there watching this right now and you think that you're gaining culture from going to these overpriced restaurants, believe me, you're not. Hit up your local
Yes.
taco cart over here in Farnsworth. They're
El
bomb.
tío.
El
Dude,
tío,
Dude, La
yeah.
Panaderia. We
seriously.
went with Jack one time. So this is a this student at Wabanzi, and he was so surprised that a piece of pan was like 60 cents.
For real.
And it's amazing how he actually was willing to go the other step. He went to the flea market by himself to buy himself stuff. Like, there's other ways that you can support communities, like Latinx communities, Black communities, and other minorities. There's other ways, not just by bringing these new businesses, that only cater to white people. Because a $50 steak, is that somebody in our community that's gonna be able to afford that? That it's insane. It's insane. $6 almost coffee, like, no, that's not gonna happen.
I think that, yeah, the world's definitely getting gentrified. I think through, and the politics of it as well. We're having a lot of development happening in the city, but who is it catering for? Who is it for? Because it sure isn't for us. And, there's all these permits that are last year, there's a lot of permits that got passed, but it's like, it's not catering for communities of color. It's catering, for white people, and I think that is not a reflection of who our city is. Historically, and historically business wise, it's been Latinx businesses of color who have really established Aurora, and I think that that's getting lost because of gentrification. And it's true to your point, Joanna. When we want to resonate with our culture, when we want to go to a neighborhood that resonates with who we are, we go somewhere else because we don't see that in Aurora. And I think that there definitely needs to be some sort of checking of white people in our city, and really checking, what are you really doing it for? Are you taking it for your own wants of having a gentrified neighborhood, or do you really care for the communities of color who live here, who have lived here, who've been here for years? And I think that to the point of East Aurora, I remember when we went to Benito Juarez, there was like mural. I remember Joanna and I were sitting together and we were just like looking at the murals because we thought, it was beautiful. And when you go to East Aurora, if you were to go inside the building without knowing that majority of the students were Latinx, would you know that majority of the students that attend a high school are Latinx? There is no way that you'd even know, because that institution or that high school, that school does not reflect the population, does not reflect the student body. And I think that that's problematic because there's this disconnection of how students feel when they're in that school and how they feel if they belong or do not belong. Especially to your guys' point of it being so segregated within the own student body as well. So fortunately, there is a lot of changes that need to be done.
I guess this kind of goes off of the whole, like, our own community is segregated, right? Like, obviously we know Aurora, yes, it's majority Latinx, but we can't ignore the fact that we still have other communities. We have Black communities, that are very much a part of our city as well. And there's this constant also separation between the two. And this is something that we have seen a lot recently, because of the recent protests. And again, we have already talked about this, but the amount of people that I saw in my Facebook feed complaining about, well, where were all these protests for the children in cages? Where were all these protests when, like, for immigration, detention centers? And, I saw a lot of people, I know Giselle was one of them. I know that we all addressed this. It was like, all these things are happening. You guys just don't get involved. Like, it's not just because you don't see it being covered in the news. And again, kind of throwing it back to Univision and Telemundo, I don't know where their coverage is on these types of things of people trying to, make changes. But just because you don't see it in the news or you don't see it trending on social media, it doesn't mean that they're not happening. Activism is happening. If you choose not to get up and be a part of that or be a leader and start something of your own, if you want a change so bad, get up and get it done. Trying to discredit someone else's movement just because you think that your struggles aren't being addressed is not the way to go, because at the end of the day, like we said at the beginning, we're all being affected by the same racist system that has to change. At the end of the day, it's that white supremacy within America. It's the idea that minorities, who are honestly not majorities in the country, don't deserve the same treatment. And if we don't stick together and make these changes, nothing's going to happen. And it's so sad to see our Latinx community be so against this Black Lives Matter movement because they think that it discredits our own struggles. That comparison of struggles just has to stop.
Because it only hurts us as individuals, because, becoming educated does take an effort, and a lot of people spew things online, and I think, as Theo was saying, like, all of these organizations, like, another form of activism, it's not only posting things online, it's actually joining those organizations, those nonprofits that always need help. They always need help because there's, there's so many few people that are, care to actually take, the action and actually put in the work. Like, this action is exhausting because of the lack of people that we want to, that we need for us to, make these protests. I think one of the things one of our best advisors said, is like the protests, all these things that the media posts, that's the pretty side of activism, right? Because it looks, and you feel empowered. But when you really look at the work behind all of that, it's a lot. It's a lot of work, about educating yourself, educating your community, and that is exhausting. It's really exhausting.
To your point, I recently attended there was a rally or like a get together of in Batavia. A lot of people turned out. Majority, almost everyone was white, and there was a lot of poetry done and a lot of words that were spoken. But the thing is that after that event, what are people actually going to do to hold themselves accountable? And like you said, make sure that they're doing the work, make sure that they're actually getting educated on how to become a productive ally and a true ally. Because it's one thing to be a performative ally where it's like, I did the post, I wrote a status, I shared it online, I said hashtag Black Lives Matter. But then what am I actually doing to do the work, to actually create a difference and actually be a part of trying to dismantle the systematic racism that has been in place in the different systems that I belong in, that I work in? And so I think that I acknowledge that it's a very much deeper conversation that's needed, and it's deeper work that needs to be done. And I'm aware of that, but I think that starting the conversation within your institutions, within your organizations, wherever it is, I think that there needs to be a dialogue on how are we going to start dismantling some of these practices that are in place. When we take a look at our leadership team, how does our leadership team look like? Are there any folks of color? What is that representation? Who are we serving? I think those are the questions that really need to be done within these organizations, within these institutions, if they want to become actual allies into this movement. And I think within a lot of individuals of the Latinx community who, their counterclaim is that, well, where is the right, where is the anger for children in cages, for individuals who are in deportation? And it's like, we've been protesting, we've been doing things, we've been advocating, we've been actively, we've been speaking to state officials and state representatives. Like, the work is being done. The question is, where have you been? the question is, if you think that the work is not there and people are not angry within this movement, then where have you been during these times? When are you going to start a protest? When are you going to start something? Because I think that, and that's where I think that a lot of the frustration starts personally, because I think that we're ignoring one movement to want to bring attention to something that, we've been actively working in. And I think that rather than folks wanting to discredit a movement, I think that they need to check their own privilege of what have I as an individual been doing to better this, to better what I'm saying that is being ignored. And so I think that our community definitely needs much needed dialogue and honest conversation on how to become better allies for our Black community.
But I think, going back to what you were saying, like, where were you? Like, it comes back to being Latinos and we divide each other. That division builds miscommunication, and that division does not, unite us as, so we can, as Latinos, bring a movement that is big, maybe to be broadcasted like this. I think there needs to be more dialogue regarding these issues, and we have to have a safe space where we can, debate on all these issues.
And I think I was just going to say, I think us as an organization, we are an example of, like, we saw some sort of gap and some sort of problem with, Latinx entering higher education. And we didn't necessarily find those spaces, so we decided we were going to take a stance and we were working to try to create those spaces, right? And then we worked and we tried to create a space. And for those of you that don't know, we hosted a conference back in October, I believe. And how many people actually took the time to go? We recently had an event with Aurora Rapid Response Team where we were trying to educate the community on safety as far as, immigration officials, or, how to identify these immigration officials, what to do if you're ever in a situation where you're being detained. How many people actually showed up? Like, you see the same people showing up over and over again, the same people that are already involved. And then people have the audacity to go online and say, well, why is anything being done for my community? There has been every other weekend someone something out there. You just choose not to show up because, I don't know, if you just don't find out about it. If you haven't found out about it, then you got to get better at your research. If you just are too lazy to show up, then you can't be blaming other people or another movement for things you yourself are not doing. Everybody's capable of getting up and doing something. Everybody is capable of getting up, and even as simple as writing to your local officials, calling your senators, anything. Literally, the smallest thing is considered activism. You just choose not to do it for whatever reason. And something else that really, really stuck with me too was the amount of people that were saying, well, in our Latinx community, there's so many undocumented people. We can't do anything because we're putting ourselves in danger. I am an undocumented person, and I understand that there is fear. And for a long time, I did have a lot of fear within me of doing something. But being able to create change doesn't always mean that you're necessarily in the front lines, putting yourself at risk of being arrested. There's so many other things behind the scenes that you can be doing that just people are refusing to do. And we need to get better at stop making excuses and getting up and getting things done. Because that's honestly what the Black community did. They were tired of only kneeling. They were tired of only, doing hashtags. So guess what? They got up and they made a movement. And look at how far it's come. In our Latina community, we need to learn from that, and we need to unite, and we need to get something done.
And I think we also need to amplify and uplift the impact and the involvement that the Black community has had for our community struggles. Back in 2018, and I don't remember her name on top of my head, but she was a Black woman who on the 4th of July got up in the Statue of Liberty and protested because of the children who were in cages. Why is that not acknowledged in our community? Why are those experiences that Black folks have done to amplify our struggles, to amplify what's going on in our community? Why wasn't she highlighted? In response to folks who are saying, where is the outrage for these children? Black folks have also been doing the work. And it's like, Black folks have also been doing something to actively protest what is being done for Latinx folks. So I think that also as a community, aside from also having much needed dialogue, we also need to amplify the experiences and the impact that and the work that Black folks have done for the collective struggle of Latinx folks.
Yeah, I think I've lived my own experience, right? But when DACA, when we had, there was a lot of broadcasts because of DACA, and a lot of, people were gathering into having these talks, and I was one of them that went out there to talk about this because it affects me, respectfully, because I'm a DACA recipient. And one of the things that has always been in my heart is, this Black woman, when she talked, because she was one of them, she was always there, in estas platicas. And I remember in Enduro, she will always be there, and she will talk about, how their struggles as Black individuals are, affect us as well. And they should be, and we should be in solidarity, working together. And I don't remember really like the words, but always I keep her in my heart because that gave me a sense of not being alone. It's not only Latinx, who are advocating for us. There's Black folks too. And, coming to, Black Lives Matter, I was like, si están ellos para mí, ¿por qué no voy a yo ponerme para ellos, right? Like, why am I not going to be there for them as well? And I think it's senseless to say, my struggle is worse than them. Like, no, there's no such thing, as worse or better. They have their own struggle, their own journey. We as well do. We are affected by the same institutions. And I think that's when we have to start asking, and then start dismantling those institutions, because racism is interwoven in the history of America. It is, and it's a fact, and we've seen it over and over. It's in the education system, in, all of these other institutions, in the government. Like, there's a lot of things that affect us, and I think one of the biggest thing we need to do is educate ourselves, really educate of the things that affect us, para que, so we can start, and then we can maybe say something publicly. I think sometimes it's better to be quiet and listen, and be actively listening than just saying something because I have an opinion, because that is a privilege we have as well. Sometimes we are, we outshine other individuals just because, we're Latinos, and it's true. Like, we've seen it within our own community, with the movement of, the DACA recipients. We saw individuals, Latinos, who look more whiter, and they were being more broadcasted than those people who were undocumented. And just because they wanted that, the space and the platform. And I thought that was, I don't know, but I've been, there's really people that sometimes do benefit from the struggles of, of low-income communities. And even Latinos use that, and I think we can talk about, how white Latinos benefit from that white privilege. And we've seen it, they are more broadcasted than other people who are, within the struggle.
Something I want to add before we go into that. So I was just talking with my dad the other day, and he's like, I mean, I don't know why we have to support them and this and that. And I'm like, Dad, we need to get into this movement with them just because the whole system is the one oppressing all of people of color, Black individuals, Mexican individuals, Latino individuals. So we need to be there fighting for us, for everyone.
Some sort of being able to take action for those that want to create some sort of change locally in the city of Aurora. There is a petition going around to make sure that we're able to hold the Aurora Police Department accountable. And one of those things is by assuring that active duty cops are wearing body cams, as well as making sure that there's no cooperation with working with ICE within the Aurora Police Department, and also making sure that those who are working within the Aurora Police Department also reside in Aurora. So it's a pretty detailed petition of the best way that we can hold Aurora Police Department accountable to be able to really create some change within our community as well.
Yes, and another thing you can do, as a form of activism, you can sign the petition for to end qualified immunity, which is a legal doctrine in the United States federal law that shields government officials from being sued for discretionary actions performed within their official capacity, unless their action is violated. But ending qualified immunity gives us, to hold accountable police officers for their wrongdoings. So it's something we should, educate ourselves in and, sign the petition.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you guys that we do have a link tree. It's in our website. It's in our Facebook page. It's in our Instagram. It has a lot of resources how to help the Black community. We have it in English and we have it in Spanish. So there you go. Also, I wanted to mention, guys, please, please, please educate your family. I know it might be, it's actually going to be like hard because this things are from like generations and generations. So just go at it.
Yeah. Another thing that we shared actually a couple days ago. Again, it's another form of activism. We did create an outline that you can use to email your state representatives to demand that they take action on what's going on and that they support the movements. A lot of times, if they don't hear from constituents, they can use that as an excuse to not do things. But if we have all our constituents like constantly contacting them and letting them know that these are things that we care about and these are things that need to get done, believe me, they are going to start doing it when people start, going at it. So we're also going to leave that link in the post so you guys can just go in there. It's really simple. You put in your address. It gives you who your state representative is. You click a button that says send email. You copy and paste the email that we have already pre-written. Or if you want to talk to them about any other form of activism that you want to get done, again, like, for example, detention centers, if that's something that you feel passionate about and you want to get that started, again, just click on that link, find your state rep, and send those things over. As well as we also wanted to mention, remember, vote. For those of you that are able to vote, that is a privilege. And you are being the voice for those of us that cannot vote. And it's very important that you do that because having officials that don't care about the things that we care about is not going to help. We need to have people in power that are actually going to care about our community. So make sure that you always get out and vote. Not only presidential elections, local are the ones that are going to impact you most indirectly. So yeah. So we'll go ahead and just wrap that Platica for today. Thank you to anyone that tuned in today. We are going to be having other Platicas like these, covering different topics, and we'll make sure to keep you guys updated on what those topics will be. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little Platica and you guys tune in with us next time. And I'll just let the rest of the team kind of sign off.
Reminder, all the resources that we use for this Platica are going to be down below. We're going to be linking them. And bye. My name is Joanna.
And we were the Sideline Project.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.